Well, good morning. I think the clock says 9:30, and welcome to this morning's Children's Committee, and a special warm welcome to those who have travelled from the mainland. It's good to see you here, and you've chosen the right day to get here, so well done. And also, I would like to welcome Mr. Phil Rowe to his first meeting of the Children's Committee. He's the local authority representative on the governing body, so welcome to the meeting. And I think, as always, because there are some fresh faces around the table, we'll do a round of introductions. Avril, can I start with you?
Yes, Avril Mumford, Lead Member for Children's Services.
Keith Grossett, Senior Officer for Children.
Lynn Plummer, Children's Social Care Manager.
Belle Reid, Parents Forum. Marion Bennett, Counsellor for Briar.
Julia Day, Health Watch Isles of Scilly.
Ted Molson, Counsellor for St Mary's.
Phil Rowe, introduced for the second time this morning.
Amanda Martin, Counsellor for St Mary's, Chairman of Council.
Simon Cade, representing the Diocese of Truro.
Colin Shorthouse, Careers South West Manager.
Fran Goshett, Counsellor for St Mary's.
Steve Appleby, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly Youth Offending Service, on behalf of Christine Walker Booth.
Ben Barrett, Senior Manager Finance and Resources.
Aisling Hick, Senior Manager Services to our Community.
And I'm Chris Sowell, elected member for the Isles of Scilly and obviously chair of this committee. And John, are you still with us?
I am indeed, Chris. Yeah, John Clement, independent chair from the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly LSDB.
Right, thank you, John. And do we have Jude anywhere on the line? Jude Bowler? No, right. Obviously, there's some ladies sitting in the viewing gallery at the moment, and they will be coming to the table and introduce themselves as they come to do a presentation. But welcome and thank you for coming across. Right, we move to item 1, declarations of interest. Councillor Mrs. Grottick.
Thank you, Chairman. I represent the Council on the Cornwall Partnership NHS Trust.
Thank you. Mrs. Day.
Chairman, thank you. I need to declare an interest in anything to do with the health visiting service because my stepdaughter...
Jude Bowler and Mrs. Cornwall have joined the conference.
Thank you. Good morning, Jude.
Hello. Sorry, I can hear you.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can hear an echo as well.
We can sort of hear you. If you try and, when you speak, try and speak quite slowly and possibly not quite so loud. Thank you, but welcome.
Okay, thank you.
That's much better. Chair of the Council.
Yeah, it's just if anything crops up to do with the school, I'll declare an interest because my son works there.
Thank you.
Yes, and anything to do with the school. My stepdaughter works at the school and her husband is a teacher.
Thank you. Any further declarations of interest? No? In which case we'll move on. And item 2 is to consider the accuracy of the draft minutes of the meeting of the Children's Committee held on the 13th of October. Are there any amendments that any members wish to make to these minutes? And if not, can I have a proposal that the minutes are correct? Thank you.
Can I have, sorry?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Oh, hi. On one of the pages around the translation, it says 700,000 responses, but that's not correct.
Sorry, I don't think we caught that. Can you give us a minute number or a page?
I'm just trying to find it. Carry on, I'll come back.
I can't, because I want to take a vote on the correctness of the minutes, and if they're not correct, I need to amend them at this stage.
Chair, if there's a slight amendment that someone wants to make, maybe you could be delegated the responsibility just to make a slight amendment to anything that Jude Bowler wishes to do.
Well, that depends on members, or if members are happy for a slight amendment to be made. Yes, well, if it isn't slight, we will deal with the minutes at the next meeting of this committee. We'll not agree them and we will not sign them. If it is only a slight one, they will come back to us. Is that acceptable to everybody? Good. So I will take I would like a proposition that there might well be a slight amendment to the minutes. And if it is slight, it's delegated to the chairman to amend the minutes. If not, it will come back to the further meeting of the Children's Committee. Thank you. Thank you. All in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Right, item 3. We have no urgent items. So we move on to part 1, reports requiring a decision. And item 4 is a presentation by the team from CAMS on the provision on the island. So ladies, would you like to come forward? Yes, you can. Yes, thank you. It's good to have you with us, and CAMS has been quite a hot topic over several years, and we hope we're moving forward.
And thank you very much for making us feel so welcome this morning and giving us this opportunity to talk about the services going forward. There are 3. My name is Linda Bennett, so I must do some introductions first. My name is Linda Bennett, so I'm the Senior Manager and Professional Lead for CAMS.
Hi, I'm Dr. Liz Myers. I'm a consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist and the Clinical Director of Children's Services for CFT.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Leslie Leadbeater. I'm presently the strategic lead for the primary mental health part of the CAMS service, soon to be acting up into the CAMS West manager.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you would kindly look at agenda item 4, page 1. There are 3 recommendations that I would like the Council to consider. The first is to make the committee aware of the CAMS transformation plan and its influence in meeting the needs of young people on the Isles of Scilly. The second point is some discussion and awareness around national and local trends and how this should impact, or how this could impact over the next 3 to 5 years, and perhaps agreeing together some recommendations to enhance operational delivery and communication in relation to how we sort of develop the service. And the third one would be to have some discussion around what information you would like to see regularly reported at this committee and agree future reporting schedules. Okay.
Thank you.
So firstly, I don't know if many of you have had an opportunity to read Future in Mind. It is a very good read. It's a national document that's been produced by the National CAMS workforce and clinical teams to look at how we can transform CAMS services, because I'm sure you're aware, as on the islands as we are on the mainland, that actually we're seeing roughly about 10% annually of more young people presenting with both emotional and mental health need. And that is replicated from the top of Scotland right down to the tip of Cornwall. The document is written very well, and I have to say it's a very good read. So if you haven't seen it, I can send you a link, and it might be worth you having a look at the document. But for the first time, it actually describes how we can deliver CAMS services differently. And by that I mean actually making sure that we not only have services that can assess and treat at the top end, and some in the middle end, but actually we can do things very differently at the very early stage so that we can try and recognise young people who are more at risk from developing emotional health problems at a much earlier stage. I have to say, I think the Isles of Scilly team have been fantastic and have been the first team to recognise the opportunity of looking at roles differently, and Leslie has been working with Aisling and Joel to create a different role for the primary mental health worker that not only looks at the middle level, but also looks at the severe end. And we do agree that there are some communication issues and some operational issues with that, as, of course, the demand is rising. But we want to see how we can build on that role going forward. We will continue, of course, to embed safeguarding children at the heart of all of our clinical care, and recognising where we can child exploitation and the need to be vigilant through our assessments. We've also seen a marked increase in young people presenting in Cornwall to the Royal Cornwall Hospital Trust for very urgent risk assessments and urgent attention where they have been self-harming. And that number has been steadily rising. We're now about 50% more than we were this time last year, and that is about 25% higher than the year previously. So we are seeing, as they are nationally, a very marked trend in young people presenting with this condition. So the intended outcomes, the CAMS transformation process that they've launched nationally does also come with, you'll be very pleased to hear, a pot of money. And down below, I'm not going to read them all out religiously, but actually there are a range of additional posts that will be coming online which will, I think, support the islands. Of particular note, we have going through a current restructuring programme to actually increase the amount of clinical supervision our managers can give. And you will have heard Leslie talk about how she's going to be the West CAMS manager. So instead of having 3 teams to manage at Redruth, Penzance and Truro, Leslie will now only have 2, which will mean that she has more opportunity to support the clinical staff who will provide in care in the west of Cornwall. We think that's a really good thing in light of the National Francis report, where it shows that clinical staff need to have access to really good supervision to make sure that the clinical decisions that staff make are the best ones. So down below, you will also see that we have a proposed increase in primary mental health cover of an additional nurse or primary mental health worker, which will help us roll out Bloom. Now, Bloom is a new initiative started by Dr. Laura Ashton and worked significantly by Leslie and her team, and it looks at providing very early help at a universal level. And with committee support, we would really like to see Bloom project developing on the islands. We think it would help with communication, help with operational arrangements, and make very early help and detection possible in a different way. It also allows us to provide consultation to professional staff who may feel anxious about some of the presentations that young people are coming to them with. So I've listed down below as well future investment. The government is very clear that it wishes to see a significant proportion of investment in the field of eating disorders, and I know that there has been some presentations from the islands, and I've listed again a little bit about the staffing. So the risks really are that we make sure that our services are equitable, delivered in a manner that improves good communication, direct care delivery, and ensure that where young people choose to continue to receive services, either from the mainland, because we have some young people who choose to come to their outpatient clinics on the mainland, or whether they come to the Isles of Scilly, that this can be supported as part of the young person's choice, and we think that's really important. We need to review our operational delivery, and we've got a set of meetings set up after this one to think about how we can improve that and then also improve our communication with the professionals that are working with young people. We would like to provide consultation and supervision in a manner which also ensures professionals feel supported both within the service hours of 9 to 5 but also outside, because we do have a very limited on-call service where we can provide professionals with support from 5 p.m. at night until 9 a.m. the next day and right the way through the weekend. And we hope today that we can share more of that information so that professionals can get advice and support where they need it. So finally, we would propose the following, that Bloom as a model of universal delivery is accepted and developed. And I think, Leslie, you're meeting with young people this afternoon to talk a little bit about that and get their views. We would like to complete a formal review of our operational arrangements about how we work with and communicate between the professional staff on the islands and the CAMS team, and perhaps present this back to this committee at a suitable time. We'd like to share our out-of-hours arrangements with you all, and we would also like the committee to help us to identify what performance information would help you to understand whether you felt that your young people were receiving a good service. I've just mentioned briefly about financial, the reorganisation of the CAMS clinical manager's post. We've met that internally ourselves within our Cornwall Partnership Trust budget. The costs of improving access to psychological therapy, which is an intervention about increasing the amount of skills we have within our team, that is being met by both NHS England and Kernel Clinical Commissioning Group. The proposed investment identified within this paper is coming from the CAMS transformational planning. And I have to say that Jude, as a commissioner, has been fantastic in her amount of support to us, and we are awaiting confirmation for when that funding is going to be released from NHS England. As you can imagine, it's a national process, and the funding coming down is rather tricky to work out at the moment. We have to report all our information to the healthcare information service, and we have got now a new minimum data set for mental health that starts this January, and we're currently just beginning to do our first month's report. And in that, it also looks at social care outcomes for young people, and some of the measures that we can look at are crime reduction, and we have a colleague here today who we work closely with, educational attainment, reduction of serious mental illness, equality and diversity, equity and parity of service provision, and of course making sure that we are Ofsted and CQC compliant. Can I hand you over now to Liz, who's going to talk very briefly about some of our current caseload and the use of the service by the islands.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi. We've had a look at the number of young people that are currently on our caseload, and I'm going to say we think, because it depends how you count them, but I estimate we've got 18 young people, which I guess if we were to compare that against the mainland and a lot of other people, that's a very high proportion of young people that are currently in our service. So I guess that's one of the things that we're aware of, and we want to work with you all and think ourselves about maybe understanding that a little bit more. There does seem to have been, I suppose, an unusual proportion for a small population of some quite sort of serious and anxiety-provoking presentations. We've certainly got 2 young people with a serious, significant eating disorder who are not currently living on the island, but from the island. And then we have a range of young people with the sorts of difficulties that we would normally see: depression, anxiety, self-harm, OCD. And so they're receiving a range of services. We've got psychiatry involvement in some and medication. There's specialist CBT therapy involved. There's psychology involvement. So there's a wide range of things going in. Like I say, there's quite a wide range of presentations, and I think we've really been struck by recently, when we were going through it all, wanting to really try and understand and see what we could maybe try and do working together to break this down a bit, because there does seem to be more than you would expect coming through to our sort of specialist services. So I guess that's one thing to suggest. I think what we're also very aware of is the issue around the need for the very specialist care and inpatient care, etc., and how we don't have any beds within Cornwall. So obviously people have to go further afield, and just how significant that is when the young people actually have to travel from the islands to go many, many miles away. And I guess we've sort of come across that issue a couple of times recently as well. And the difficulty in being able to provide any kind of crisis out-of-hours support. I think, as Linda's already alluded to, we don't currently have very much in the way of that on the mainland, but we probably have a little bit more ability to scramble things together than possibly over here. So I think that's another piece of work we want to try and do together. What would be really helpful as a result of this. So we're recognising that there's currently quite a high caseload. We want to understand why. We want to look at how we can possibly make sure that we're really getting in early and doing the most we can for early intervention and prevention. We obviously want to make sure that for those young people that really need highly specialist services, we make that as seamless as possible. I think what we'd like to do as well is also, we're hopeful that possibly looking at the Bloom model, which we will talk about in a minute, will maybe help us do a few things a little bit differently, sort of recognising that it can be challenging for various reasons, a lot of which are to do with travel and being able to get over here. So are there different ways of getting supervision, Skype, FaceTime, other ways of using technology to provide care from a distance that might make things a little bit easier to manage over here? So we're very keen to explore that a lot more, because we're very aware of how challenging it can be. So on Friday, for instance, when we just were not able to get somebody flown over, could there be some other ways of managing these issues that don't involve necessarily absolute face-to-face help, and that could open up, I suppose, the scope to a wider group of professionals working together. So I suppose what we're sort of saying at the moment is we've got actually a lot of young people, and there's quite a lot of input going into them at the moment. Probably there's a big blip, so this is not necessarily how it always is. But it does seem to have been at a reasonably high level now for probably the last a year or more. Yes. So there's something we need to understand. I think that's right. So there's quite a lot of extra sort of specialist CAMHS provision going in at the moment, which is right and proper for those young people that need it. But it's around trying to work that out and make sure that happens in the best way possible and using resources the best way possible.
Thank you.
Apologies. Leslie, would you like to be able to just briefly outline the Bloom project and...
5 minutes, is that all right? Sorry?
The whistle-stop tour. Okay.
We have the paperwork.
You've
but
got exactly.
Some explanation would actually be quite useful.
If I, rather than do this whole PowerPoint slide presentation,
Yes.
if I talk through what I know, because I was part of this project that was launched last year, interestingly by the GPs. The GPs led this. They were saying that they wanted, I suppose they felt a little bit frustrated with the high percentage of referrals coming into CAMHS, 40% that were not accepted, which is, quite frustrating for a GP to have a letter coming back saying, sorry, we haven't accepted this referral, over to you, or we recommend something else. So the GPs led this, and they built a model called, we called it Bloom. It doesn't stand for anything, it's not an acronym of anything, but it was designed to pick up that 40% and use something that they've been using for older people. They're called the Penwith Pioneer Project. You might have heard of it. It's been quite well publicised, to see if they could match a way of working that could look at real collaborative working with a network in the localities, very crucially in Penwith, to see what resources could be a little bit more thoughtfully thought through with knowledge in the people in the room. So basically this is a multi-agency forum where we meet weekly, and all the referrals that come into CAMHS that aren't accepted or are signposted for the primary mental health part of the service, which is an additional 30%, so that's a big number. We set up weekly meetings, and we will invite people that know the family. It's not for families to attend, I should say. This is a professional model, where we have a case discussion and we all think about what's right for the child at the right time, the right place, what intervention can be provided that will, at least this child will get seen, and then report back to the forum, and then we think about, does it need a mental health intervention on top of what is provided? There's a lot of services in the Penwith area that we can tap into, and it's been hugely successful, as you can see from the stats in this report. I just wanted to say one thing, though, that it's built very much on a Thrive model. And if you're not familiar with the Thrive model, it's a Thrive approach model. Every child coming through Bloom has a Thrive assessment, which is very much an emotional wellbeing assessment in schools. So very exciting way of working at how emotional well-being affects education. So it's very robust, very well evidenced that we can achieve good outcomes for children when we think creatively and imaginatively about their emotional well-being needs. So have a look at the slides. Any questions, come back to me. I'd love to have talked through it in much more detail, but I think my time's up by looking at you, Chair.
That's a very good whistle-stop explanation. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies. Chair and the Council.
Yes, I think we should do everything we can to be supportive of this. I think it's long overdue. My thoughts as I listened to the various presentations were that these problems have been there always, as long as we've had a community on Scilly. The problem is they probably weren't identified necessarily as mental health issues. Other reasons are found. In common with everywhere else in the world, there's always been a denial about mental health and all the taboos associated with it, the stigma, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm very concerned that the channels of communication stay open. I was very relieved when you highlighted the problems with telehealth, and I think the pressures we face now are exacerbated by, and I think of some of the problems. Unfortunately, it's a small community. We have a rough idea of the people we're talking about. It's always very difficult. But some of the problems, particularly with eating disorders, there seems to be quite a body of evidence that social media and peer group pressure is behind a lot of it. That is not peculiar to Scilly, of course. However, those pressures are constant. So if the people in need of help are subject to the vagaries of the weather and interrupted appointments, lack of follow-through of care, on the one hand, the negative pressures are constant, but the positive help is interrupted. So anything we can do to alleviate that would be, well, vital, I think. Yeah, I think it's really about that. I am concerned that, and particularly I know there's been a recent very sad case where there seems to be a lack of possibilities to help within Cornwall or even Devon, and Bristol has been mooted as an outcome. Now that, for a young person from Scilly, is in itself quite a terrifying prospect. I'm sure you're as aware of that as we are, but anything we can do to put pressure on that to have it sorted would be fantastic. But I am extremely supportive and would recommend anything you need recommending to address these issues.
That's really been helpful. We do recognise that when the children do come from the city and they have to go for any treatment on the mainland, it can be quite harrowing and difficult. And we try and talk to professionals about how we balance that risk and discuss that with families as well. But I do agree with you, when you start to go beyond Plymouth, it can feel very, very isolating for families, and that's something that, you know, we're not fortunate to have a Tier 4 unit in Cornwall, where, you know, people can come in if needed, but obviously we still continue to pressure for that service for young people in Cornwall.
Thank you. Councillor Milson?
Yeah, I would absolutely echo what Councillor Martin has just said, but I would probably go a step further in the respect that I have had experience of it firsthand and the like within the family and the like. And one of the things that I think is actually missing from all of this is the top-end crisis management involving the police and inappropriate accommodation in crisis. For a young person, a police cell is not the right place at all, and I'm quite sure that the constable over there would agree with me, is that the police have not got the baseline training to deal with that sort of thing. I would offer my support in encouraging you and us, for that matter, to get together and lean on government so that we've got somewhere on a 24-hour, 365-day-a-year basis that is appropriate for youngsters to be cared for, rather than stuck in a prison cell, which at the moment, I know it hasn't applied necessarily on the islands very often at all. However, I know it does occur in Cornwall and Devon. That is really the point that I'd like to make, and if we, as a council, can bring pressure to bear, please ask, because I think it is absolutely essential.
I'm delighted to hear you say that, because actually when you read Future in Mind, there is a very large section on crisis management. And what I should have perhaps included in my report is that I've been asked to put a business case together to look at crisis services across the whole of Cornwall, and that will of course include the Isles of Scilly by the end of March. So I'll be very keen today to talk to people. And out of interest, I noticed yesterday I was sent a policy about 136 management on the islands, and I'm wondering if we actually, as part of that business plan, need to sit down with colleagues on the island and review that for young people. I'm looking at Aisling now in particular, because it didn't feel very young person friendly. It felt much more adult focused, and I think
it is. I mean, the issue, we have just signed out with Section 136, and I think and we're all clear that unless a crime has been committed, the police cell is not an appropriate place for anybody. So we now do have a safe place at the hospital. The whole idea behind Section 136 is that the best services are available on the mainland. So the whole thing is directed towards safe transport to the mainland. And so we only use the hospital room while we're waiting for that transport to be organised. But as you can imagine, at this time of year, that's really tricky. The issue with the hospital for young people is that it's not a paediatric unit. And so actually it's only safe for a child to be there for up to 4 hours. And that is a clinical recommendation. So there we have an issue around it. So it's 4 hours, and actually by the time you galvanise the boat and so on, and escorts, because children cannot just go with mum and dad, we need a professional to come over, but we are going to rehearse that scenario with our colleagues today. It's really important. I will just add that we have actually started moving towards the Bloom model already, in that we've organised the Thrive training for school. It's coming up soon, and Keith's organised the funding through Jude, and school are also going to appoint a pastoral worker as part of the whole team around the child, because I think school, as you can imagine, is so critical at early detection of these wobbles, because I feel that all of those 18 children would have presented early warning signs a long time ago, which we could have prevented. And I think the neglect of mental health for children and adults on the islands is what's exacerbating these issues. So I'm so glad that we've now got some focus on this.
Thank you. Mrs. Day.
Chairman, thank you. Yes, I was going to comment on the issue of transfer at times of crisis, because I think we acknowledge that unfortunately the inpatient care, as it were, is a problem that we share with Cornwall and Devon. There is simply a lack of beds, and that's got to be tackled at a regional level, and a place of safety is something that we need here, but our uniqueness comes in that 28 miles of water, and it is imperative that we sort out how we manage safe transfer. I would just like to point out that the Health Watch is almost leads, I would say, on the Isles of Scilly Medical Transport Group. And they have just recommended that the work undertaken regarding the transfer of adults in mental health crisis should be used to develop appropriate protocols for children, not just in mental health crisis, but also the safe care and transfer of victims of sexual assault. And I think that is something we can be progressing locally and very quickly, and Health Watch would certainly urge that to happen.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Bennett.
Thank you. Yes, it's a long time since I was employed by the NHS, so it's historic. And the lack of acute services for adolescents was well recognised then, and it continues today. However, I would like to support what Aisling has said about early intervention, really. And I do feel that the school should play a bigger role in this, because 18 cases from Scilly is really quite an alarming number. And the old-style school nursing service, I'm sure, should have an important role. I confess I don't know the present status of school nurse here.
We do have a school nurse,
yes.
part-time. Yeah.
Yes. But I think the link between mental health and communication for young people within the school, and that it is a trusted, good access, is vitally important. I wonder how many of those 18 cases, in fact, would not have appeared had there been really adequate early service.
Any? Ashley?
I mean, I think one of the kind of really interesting things in the Blue model is that measure on feeling different. And I think we can all reflect about how do young people in such a small community feel if they feel different. So I think there's a lot of work we can do about educating our young people to feel that they can express themselves if they don't feel they fit into their peer group and so on. So I think you're absolutely right. There's a kind of whole range of services we need to provide as a community to support children who do feel different. And I think, you know, we talk about this all the time, don't we? And the children that Lynn works with will always express as some part of their worries that they feel they don't fit into their year. And that's a huge concern to us because the year group is 20 people. So what are we doing as a community to support that? So anyway, there's going to be loads of work we're doing. I'm just so glad that we've started a conversation here today. It's going to be a really good project, this. Yeah.
Are there any further comments? John or Jude, do you wish to come in and make comments on discussion?
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, I'm greatly encouraged by what's happening. We've got plans at our executive group tomorrow for the LSCB. And as an LSCB, we're trying to do all that we can to add pressure that's being put on the system by yourselves, because we clearly see this as one of our top priorities, and we need to know that the system is being put, our providers and commissioners are being pushed to provide the best possible service.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add, the funding is non-recurrent, so we have to be careful that we invest this in services that can then be mainstreamed. So the investment is likely to go more into the bottom sector early support rather than traditional CAMs. So although Linda has helpfully listed some of the proposals, it's unclear if those will be funded.
Thank you. Mrs. Day, did you want to come in?
Chairman, yes, can I just raise one more concern, one word really, autism. Because I've been reading a lot of these documents, and there are things that come up repeatedly around eating disorders, etc., etc. The word autism I can only find once in any of these documents. It's mentioned once on page 58 of the Transforming the Emotional Wellbeing and Mental Health Offer for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, the CAM strategy. It's mentioned once in this report on page 3 at 2.2.6, a proposed increase in staffing to support the high demand for autism assessments. I'd like to know where our local authority is with regard to its autism strategy. Just yesterday, we heard from Healthwatch Cornwall that apparently there appears to be a 2-year wait at the moment for an ASDAP, an assessment ASDAP. And that seems to me an extraordinary long time for a child who will no doubt feel very different to be waiting for an assessment.
And their families.
Well, obviously, autism doesn't go hand in hand with emotional health issues, though often there is an impact between the two. The autism pathway is still an issue in terms of referral for assessment, and we are, on the case. We've done quite a lot of work as a social care team on our toolkit for supporting children with autism. And to be honest, given the size of our team, we tend to put autism in the basket with all the things that present to us, and try and put the child at the centre of the work we do, and make sure that we kind of therefore give them personalised care around that. We don't have an autism strategy as such, because we don't tend to do strategies for each separate different kind of issue that faces us, because otherwise we'd just be writing strategies and wouldn't get the work done. But if that was something that members of this table feel they'd like to see, of course we can develop one. But yeah, the autism referral pathway is an issue, and we know that, and it came to health scrutiny in Cornwall, and maybe should come to health scrutiny here too.
I would make the recommendation that we need to look again at autism pathways on the Isles of Scilly. There are concerns being raised, and the word is mentioned in these reports. Not as often as I would like to see it mentioned, but it is mentioned in these reports.
Yeah, autism isn't about emotional health. Children with autism are more likely to experience emotional health issues, but this is about emotional health for all children. But if there's a specific piece of work we would like to do around children with autism and how they access all services, both for physical presentations and emotional health presentations, we can do that. Of course we can.
Thank you. I will take that would somebody like to second Mrs. Day's proposition? Because I think I'll take that separate to, yes, thank you, Chairman, to the 3 recommendations. Well, I think we've had a very useful discussion, and I think your discussions after this meeting will also be very fruitful. I think some of us around this table have been talking about CAMS for several years, and it's really good to see that it is actually having a much higher profile. And we do thank you for coming today. It has been very encouraging, that you actually recognise the situation on the islands and the difficulties we have, because I think recognising it obviously helps you overcome some of it. And obviously we look forward to the process and the progress that goes follows. So we do thank you. But first of all, we have the 3 recommendations that are on page 1 of our report that Linda referred to right at the beginning. Could I have a proposal? Thank you, Chairman. Could I have a second one? A seconder for that, please? Thank you, Avril. All in favour, please show. Thank you. That is carried. Anybody against? No? And then Mrs. Day proposed, and the Chairman of Council seconded, that a pathway stroke strategy for autism is developed and brought to this committee in the future. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Anybody against? No, that is carried. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you. I think that's been a very useful discussion. And we now move to item 5, update on decisions made in the previous meeting. And we have a report from our senior officer, Keith.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. This is a very short report that is on page 9 of your pack that identifies the actions agreed at the last committee meeting and an update on progress against them. There's where progress has been or actions required, they've all been carried out, or they're as part of the agenda items later on in this committee meeting. So I'll just ask that members note
Thank you,
note
Keith.
the actions taken, and we move on.
Yeah. Are there any questions to Keith? I think the main items are on our agenda items that we'll discuss later. Could I just have a proposal that we do note this report? Thank you. All in favour? Lovely. Thank you very much. We move on to item 6. Sorry, partners, this is what we do have to go through at this stage of the year and talk about finances before March. So item 6 is a finance update. Again, a report from Senior Manager, Children's Services, Keith, but we also have Ben with us, who is our Senior Manager of Finance, and I'm sure it'll be a he'll be both be answering our questions. Indeed. So, Keith, you're going to kick off?
Yeah, I'll kick off, thank you. So, we received a notification from the DFE regarding the Isles of Scilly Education Grant in December, which is a special form of the Dedicated Schools Grant for other local authorities. The grant letter is attached as an appendix to this and remains the same at £3,138,647, which is to be split between the Five Islands School and the local authority to deliver a key range of educational and children's services activities. So that is no change to the scale of the grant from last year or even the year before. So we've been working on a zero growth budget for the last 3 years, 4 years actually. So as a result, the LA and the school split stay pretty static from last year. So The major pressures within the grant, though, have been increases in high-level, high-need SEN, places that we, as a local authority, need to fund, which has affected the split between the school and the local authority share. You can see the breakdown of the split between there. Included in the school share is an exceptional factor to run monthly boarding house, and the various other factors such as sparsity and split sites are built in to enhance or boost the school share to allow for the small class sizes and remoteness and various other pieces that impact on education on the Isles of Scilly. So the first recommendation is that I ask members to approve there's the budget monitoring position as well, but that we approve the awarding of the grant. The second recommendation is that we acknowledge the receipt of the grant. Third recommendation is that we acknowledge the receipt of the grant, and that we also look at fees and charges as proposed in Appendix 3. We've been asked to look at a 2% rise to fees and charges, which is shown on page 33. Again, for children's services, fees and charges are very small. We're looking at around about tens of pounds for individual items for renting out buggies, cots and so on and so forth. But we'd also like to initiate a voluntary contribution from families who attend early years activities to contribute to consumables used, of a voluntary contribution of £1, but we don't want to alienate any families who come to Scilly, who come to the services, who actually are most in need of those services.
Currently, we do not charge for anything for all the mums that come to the children's centre, and there's coffee, etc. laid on. So I think, to seek a voluntary contribution is actually doesn't go amiss.
And apologies, but my fifth point is that we review the budget monitoring situation as at the end of November, which are currently showing underspends across the budget, all services, as at November, but there are still some significant payments to be made that we will have a better picture of given on December's budget monitoring that we can work on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Keith. I'm not going to rush and take those recommendations as they are, because we've got the whole of next year's budget contained within this pack, and I don't know. Sorry, Chairman, did you want to come in?
Well, just on the very small point, voluntary contributions, I think whatever we provide as a local authority, people have got to understand that we cannot carry the financial burden alone, and if people don't support what we do, even in small ways, they will lose the services. We simply cannot afford to go on being quite as generous as we have been.
Councillor Wilson, did you want to come in?
Yeah, Keith touched on the question that I was about to raise on the underspends that were there. Have we, I know this goes back to November, we're now in February, have we got any best guesses as far as outturns are concerned for the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment? Because some of those underspends are quite significant looking through there.
I haven't currently forecasted right forward, but I think we should be well within this year's budget. Historically, we have reported underspends in the low 100,000s based on very similar budgets. I don't see anything outrageous on the horizon that should affect that picture.
I think we do have the next agenda item is capital investment, so some of those underspends might be heading in that direction. Ben, do you wish to say anything about the budgets?
Thank you, Chair. Only to echo what Senior Officer Children's Services has provided, that this is a budget position to November. Not the ideal position to be in, but we are suffering from staffing resources continuing. We do hope to be able to provide a January update within the next 2 weeks. So that should assist the officer to provide figures. Historically, underspends have been in those regions. I mean, my gut feeling is that we will be approaching 6 figures on this in the current year, probably 80 to 100,000, but we will see that as it comes through. In terms of reserves, we're coming on to capital projects, but we currently have just under 500,000 in revenue reserves for children's services, which are ring-fenced. You'll note from the budget paper that there actually is a draw from reserves of around 87,000 this year. So we will need to continue to plan to make future years sustainable, especially as the grant is not increasing and our costs, even though inflation is very low at the moment, will continue to be on the upward scale.
And I think the drain that's coming from reserve this year it's alluded to within our papers, but it's an ongoing financial commitment from this authority, so and quite a significant one that we have to meet. And in the past we have been putting money aside for if an occasion should arise, and now it has arisen. So it is fortunate that we do have some reserves, but it won't cover the whole cost for the several years ahead that we are supporting somebody. Councillor Milton.
Just very quickly, could I request the budget monitoring papers, that if they are available in the next 2 weeks, we have them ASAP, outside of normal committee times?
I think that's quite a tough ask on our finance department.
No, I did say, because I have had personal contact with the finance department, I realise you're under pressure, but if it's available, any chance of either emailing it to us rather than not?
I would do my utmost to do that. We have got a considerable pressure with the overall budgeting for the authority in the next 2 weeks, but yes, I'll endeavour to do so.
And obviously we're working up to the actual setting next year's budget, which work is, we have next year's budget before us today that hopefully we are going to approve. And obviously the finance team are doing that for every committee in the next few weeks, so there's heavy workload. Mrs. Gotti.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just say how much I hope that we will find the resources that we need to properly implement the Key Stage 2 improvement plan. Regardless of where we find the money from, we have to find it, obviously.
I think there are, if members, I'm sure you've all read it, there are growths in budget, significant ones throughout the papers. I think school improvement being one of them. I think CAM strategy being another one. So there are significant growth in budget. So we are trying to target the money to where it is needed. Mr. Rowe.
Just a context statement from my point of view, involvement with the school, is that my understanding is that the school does have an underspend. Having said that, I recognise that there's an issue of commitment of funding for particular purposes. So it's a little bit of a grey area. What I have said to the school very strongly is that they have a decision to make, is that they could find themselves with a very healthy budget and a very low Ofsted score at the next visit, or indeed they could then actually use some of the funding to absolutely make sure that this school is good or indeed outstanding. So the decision is that of the governing body, but I would just say on a personal level, my advice to them is not to sit there with a healthy budget and a poor Ofsted score. This school needs to improve, and I believe that they should use every strategy, including finance, in order to make that happen.
Thank you for that. And it is all about the children. That's why we all do it. Did you want to come back, Mrs. Gotti, or is that?
No, I find that very reassuring, and I'd just like to support Mr. Rowe and the school in where they move forward and how they move forward.
Are there any other questions around aspect of the budget? I mean, I've got scribbles all over mine, but I don't think we'll go into that at this given time. But I hope you have noted the increase in budget. A lot of it is very much the same, but I see some budgets have, budget lines have been removed completely. But I'm sure the finance team and Keith, if members do have further questions, would be more than willing to answer them. So if there are no further questions around finance, I will go back to the recommendations before us. And perhaps at this stage I should gently remind our partners that actually it is only elected members that can actually vote on the finances pertaining to the council. So sorry, but you might be quite grateful really, but it is only... Right, could I have a proposal for those 5 recommendations? Thank you, Chairman. Seconded by Vice Chairman. All in favour, please show. Anybody against? No, that is carried. Thank you very much. We move to item 7, capital investment. Again, a report of the Senior Officer of Children's Services. Keith.
Thank you. So, as with all landlords, we have to look after our estate, and we have issues with the heating system in Mundersley Boarding House, which provides residential accommodation for students resident on the off-island secondary age students as they come to school Monday to Friday. We have an old oil-fired heating system that is increasingly unreliable. We have commissioned an options analysis from a heating engineer to look at some of the ranges of replacement systems that are available for us, and that is included in an annex to the paper. The heating engineer has proposed an oil-based system that, after further thought, we feel is probably not entirely appropriate for our local situation, given the costs of freighting oil, reliability of the system, local engineering support, and it seems a very slightly sledgehammer walnut approach for a 4-day-a-week heating system that will only really needs to keep a building warm for students between the hours of 5 and 11 at night, or so on and so forth. So I would recommend that we look at a combined electrical and solar heat system for the building, funded from a draw on capital funds earmarked for people, places and school capital. The reasons being that an electrical system will probably have a lower and easier fit, and hopefully less disruptive fit. We have a store or a local reserve of electricians and electrical engineers who can actually manage and maintain such a system. And with a solar heating supplement on the hot water supply, hopefully we anticipate the actual total cost of ownership to be very, very similar to that of oil, if maybe slightly cheaper.
Chair. Thank you. Anybody against? No, that is carried. Thank you very much. We move to item 8. We give Keith a bit of a rest. Children's social care challenges and barriers. We have a report from the Children's Social Work Manager, Lynn.
Okay, thank you. I've nothing to add to the report really, just to say that I started off the report looking at the challenges and barriers that we talked about at the last committee meeting and how we've been tackling those. Some information about the numbers of children and families we're working with and the key areas in terms of quality assurance, training and Ofsted compliance, and the key challenges for the next quarter. So I'm grateful for any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you. Vice Chairman, Nick Member?
Yes, see our numbers have gone up a little bit, haven't they? What about the, are we making sure that all the evidence is put in now? With you've got a new system, haven't you? Is it working properly now?
The new system has got lots of advantages. It means that we are able to record evidence in a much improved way than we had done previously. However, as with any new system, there are some glitches, and we're addressing those with the provider of the service at the moment, and I think Keith, for his sins, is leading on that. But those issues are being addressed. I think we're getting better as a team in terms of providing evidence, and certainly from the case audits that we've done, we're not perfect. We're learning all the time. We do a quarterly lessons learned from audits and try to improve our practice constantly. But I think we are improving and we are getting there.
Yeah, I'm sure there's been big improvement. I think that's all. And I think we desperately need the CAMS people on board, don't we? And to get something working better with that.
I mean, I would echo what Cam's colleague said this morning, that since I've been here, the year that I've been here, I've been quite shocked at the number of children with significant mental health issues. And we definitely need to do some work on where that is coming from, to get in at the early stages, to make sure that we've got some preventative work in, to be doing that. But yes, it has been quite a challenge over the last 12 months to meet the needs of those children with mental health issues.
And I think, one of the issues that children always raise around that is the lack of confidentiality within these islands. And I think all of us as individuals actually can help towards that in promoting it, use of social media, etc., etc. I think, it is their number one worry, I think, around a lot of their mental health issues at whatever level. Sorry, Avril, did you have some?
No, that's fine. And it's also that people not coming to you when they need to come to you is still a bit of a problem, isn't it, being on a small island? And
I think it is. I think we're starting to make some headway by getting involved with families at that preventative stage. And that we've had some feedback from families that have used the service to say that they've actually been talking to friends and members of the community to say it's okay, they're all right, they're not going to grab children, they're not going to take them away, and to actually, who found us supportive and encouraging people to use our service as well. That does have an impact in the fact that our numbers are increasing. We are providing more children and families with a service now than we were a year ago, but at the moment we're just about managing that.
Thank you. Sorry, Steve, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just quickly, in terms of confidentiality, I know this is an NHS issue really, but I know that there was a particular instance I'm aware of, happened not that long ago. I went up to the hospital in the waiting room and there was a child there who I'm aware has issues, but and it was clear what the issue was. It was just sitting. The child was just sitting across from me, and I think that's something that perhaps could be looked at, because this, it's definitely was a mental health issue.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Grottek.
Thank you, Chairman. While appreciating everything that Lynn has said, I could just say that I think we all have to accept that if we improve the system, the short term might be that the numbers will rise, and so that this will have, and in a way, this could be a good thing. And as you say, families who are supported may well feel able to share with people that they also think need support the fact that they have felt that they've been in a comfortable environment. So that this has got to be part of this evaluation. But I'd also agree with Steve, there are some very difficult situations here, and it's going to be very difficult to get around the fact that we're a very small island and that we live sometimes in a bit of a goldfish bowl.
I think if we have the pastoral support worker in the school, that is going to be key in identifying some of those early stage problems. They're easily identifiable. It's someone that's readily available for pupils to go and talk to, that they can build up a rapport with pupils, and that hopefully then we can start to target some of those lower level problems and that prevent that from escalating. So this might be a sort of a short-term pain for a long-term gain in the fact that we will actually then start to get a balance of the services that are needed and direct them in the right place.
Thank you. John, do you wish to add anything to this report?
I think if I could comment probably in the next item on the agenda, I can probably cover some observations that affect this and add value to it well.
Right, thank you very much. Beryl.
We've said a lot this morning about the children and that, and I do think that we ought to take on board the early intervention and also the continuity, because that's not what's been happening.
No.
And I think that is the most important thing for our young people.
Thank you. Are there any further comments on this report? I think it's a very useful report. It does actually inform members of the work being done and the challenges, etc. Could I have a proposal that we... Thank you. Thank you. All in favour, please, Sham. Thank you very much. Now we move to item 9 that came through as a supplement. Social care self-evaluation and development plan. in preparation for the Ofsted inspection that will inevitably come at some stage. So Ashley's put this together, so I'll ask her to talk to it.
Okay.
Has everybody got a copy to start with?
Right, so this is a long document and it's only a quarter written. There's some more sections to come. It was pretty arduous filling it out, but I'm hoping that by bringing all this stuff together, actually, it will make us really focus on are we doing the right things for children. The new Ofsted framework is really exacting, and as I've said, that's tough for me and Lynn and Keith, but that's really good for children. I don't ask you to approve this today. I actually ask that people contribute to this because this has got to be a genuinely multi-agency self-evaluation. So how do we, as a team of professionals, support children on the Isles of Scilly? And we'll have colleagues from all the health trusts need to participate in this, and as well as the police, as they have done for the Cornwall self-evaluation. I think just to summarise, what we talk about in the team is obsessions, because we can't do everything at once. And it's a bit like talking about autism, that is also on the to-do list. But I suppose each year we kind of try and break it down based on evidence. What are we really going to focus on? Last year, our obsessions were thresholds and making sure that people are getting the right service at the right time. So Lynn did a review of all our cases and has made sure that all our children are being supported at the right level, which meant that a lot of children were recategorised as children in need. We were obsessed with voice of the child and making sure that the lived experience of the child really sings through when you audit a case. And then also it was about the database, and getting that database was critical so that we could follow a child's journey through the system. I think our obsessions this year are, as you can imagine, emotional health, early help and the quality of the partnership. And a lot of that will be about emotional health issues. But I think actually, as a partnership, are we sure that we are dealing with children consistently against a set of practice standards which are as robust as when we're dealing with children in statutory framework? I feel very reassured by the work going on in social care, but I want to make sure that the work that school does, that police do, that all health professionals do, when we're working on a CAF is just as strong. And I think we also need to look at child sexual exploitation, and we're going to develop a kind of strategy for the islands, which will sit underneath the LSCB one, which looks at what does CSE look like on the Isles of Scilly, because it will be here, because everything is everywhere, and it will be here, and we're looking at particular risk areas around our transient workforce and also our 16 and 17-year-olds who live on the mainland. And I think we're going to have to really ramp up the provision that we're providing, because I think the risks of the modern world and the pressures on young people when they go away are such that I think those children could be at significant risk. So we're going to do quite a lot of work. It's going to be a big area of focus. So they're going to be our obsession. So that sits within this plan. It also serves not just as a self-evaluation to please inspectors. It actually is our working document to improve our services.
Thank you. Councillor Molson.
Very encouraged with what you've just said, Aisling. Thank you very much for that. And I think it takes some of the wind out of the sails of what I was about to say. In previous self-evaluation, there has been a large desktop exercise of box ticking, but I think Aisling has just emphasised the fact that this going forward is not going to be that, and I would encourage you in what you're doing.
Thank you. John, you wish to come in?
Yeah, I think, just echoing what's been said, I've come over a couple of times now, and my last trip, the 16th to 17th November, and I've tried to look at frontline practice to really see what is being provided to our children. And I'm greatly encouraged by what I've seen, and I intend to come back probably March, April time and do a repeat visit. But certainly last time I came over, I looked at 7 cases, which ranged from cases that were, newly received by social care to some which were long-standing and families that have worked for a long time with the team. What I was able to see, to some extent, what I was able to see is that where there were incidents where children needed a very much dynamic service, that was provided. And there were very prompt interventions by the team working with colleagues such as police and health to make sure those children were safe, those children were seen, and then understanding was going to be. The cases I looked at that had a bit more longevity, I was actually delighted to see that you could see the real progress being made. Like for one child in particular, you can see that his health had improved, commented upon by health professionals. His self-esteem had improved, as seen by other professionals. There were less incidents reported within the family and at school. And there appeared to be improvements in that child's personal behaviour. So there was something tangible to show that progress has been made across a number of fronts, and you could see a distinct good outcome for that particular child. From the voice of the child perspective, on both my visits, there's been a real clear focus from your professional to get to a point where children or a child can actually say what is their lived experience, and different means to use, different locations to use to get to that point. And I see that as really good practice, and I wish I could do the same as consistently delivered in Cornwall, because if we were, then we'll be in a real strong position. I think that's a real strength for yourself. I've got real positive comments around the assessment that's being conducted. For me, not being a social care professional, there is a caveat to how accurate I am, but the assessments were thorough, they were focused on the children, they were done with a real purpose. And I think, to me, they were really serving the needs of those children. Supervision was evident in everything that I saw. There was good supervision, there were big challenges to staff, and as a consequence of those discussions, things were changing, people were identifying new things to do, practice was changing, so I thought that was really positive. I did take cognizance of the report that the Council had commissioned from Marion Russell, who's the Principal Social Worker for Cornwall Council Child Social Care, and her comments I thought were very, very positive. There were some comments around the quality, and I think some of the work was unsafe because it wasn't recorded as well as it could have been, but overall I thought that sort of reinforced what I came and saw. So I think it's positive. I don't want to be complacent and I don't want to be overconfident, but I think we're certainly moving in the right direction. There is, a need for us to come back and look again in April to see if that progress has been maintained, that it is consistently being delivered at a period of time. But from my perspective, I think there's some real positives there, things to build on, and the topics that Ashley has already talked about this morning, I think that fits in line with our observation, looking in on as your sort of friend. And I think in relation to what you already outlined in the early intervention plans and growth of numbers of children coming in, we see that as a real so, we're keen to support you on the progress you're being made, and hopefully coming back in April and doing a further test of your systems and examination of frontline performance will assist you in that particular understanding.
Right, thank you, John. Thank you for those words of encouragement, and I can assure you there won't be any complacency this end, and progress will continue to be made. But thank you for that encouragement, and also well done to the team who are actually taking things forward. So that's good. Back to the social care self-evaluation form, and I do urge partners to contribute to this. There are 3 recommendations for us to take today listed. Could I have a proposal if there are no further questions? Thank you, Ted. Unless there are any further questions? No, it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. And now we move to item 10, children's wellbeing activities, and I welcome Joel to the table. Again, just really a report to inform partners and members what has been going on for the general wellbeing of children in our community. Joel.
Thank you, Chairman. It's quite a short report, but I'd encourage members to read it in tandem with the report on the Children and Young People's Plan, because there's sort of links between the two. The report sets out some of the activity which has been taking place to support the physical well-being of children and young people, and to encourage children and young people to lead healthy lifestyles, and also to keep children and young people safe. I'm delighted that the work we did in August on the Bikeability project was extended into the October half term, And to date, over 80 children and young people from Scilly have taken part in the bikeability training. To support sustainability, we now have 2 members of our workforce trained to deliver that locally, so we're less reliant on mainland providers, and that will help keep the cost down. There's been some good collaborative working across sea safety, again, which is part of a children and young people's plan. One member of staff spent 4 days at the RNLI HQ in Poole recently to learn about the national messages which are being delivered around keeping children safe on the water. There's also been some good working with Lifelong Learning, who recently organised some Royal Yachting Association accredited training opportunities, and Children's Services helped subsidise the attendance of a couple of teenagers. So again, hopefully they're safer on the water as a result of that project. Healthy lifestyles have been supported through the gym and swimming pool. So swimming sessions have been re-established and have really good take-up. We've got dozens of children taking part in those activities. There's also a teen gym session after school, which is encouraging people to go and use the gym facilities. So again, those projects are teaching new skills, helping to raise self-esteem, but also, as we alluded to earlier, helping to raise revenue for our facilities as well to keep those costs under control. And also within the Children and Young People's Plan, there's reference to the MARAC, which is Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Conferences, which are associated with domestic abuse. We had 2 days of training from 12's company about 2 weeks ago. 21 professionals attended day 1 of that, and the general feedback was that Scilly is doing well in terms of some of the work around domestic abuse. And some of the messages I picked up were around the cultural shifts. There seemed to be more confidence in disclosing some domestic abuse challenges which individuals were facing, so that was good to hear. But again, there's clear correlation between domestic abuse in a household and impact on children and young people. So that was, again, positive messages which were taken forward from that.
Thank you, Joel. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Mrs. Broderick.
Thank you. Just a quick one. I don't know what we can do, but it was concerning to read in the post-16 transition that host providers are taking the decision not to offer our young people accommodation, because that's quite a difficult situation. I wondered what we could possibly do to support. I can't really see what we can do to influence, obviously, people's choices, apart from making sure that it's as financially rewarding as it can be. But that's just an arrangement between the parents and the providers.
It is entirely an arrangement between parents and providers, and we have, for this year, one family who had previously taken 4 students are actually moving away from the area, so it's a piece of work that our mainland pastoral support worker and the colleges will be working on in recruiting as many accommodation providers as possible that we can DBS and ensure provide safe accommodation going forward. But it is a real risk and a pressure affecting families looking at post-16 options and choices going forward.
Thank you. Ashley, do you want to come in before I do?
We also are a bit concerned that actually maybe the funding per student is also a barrier to sourcing appropriate accommodation, because actually you don't want to be funding just lodgings, you want to be funding somebody who is actually going to support a young person to get their homework done, be ready in the morning, and so on. So we are going to actually review that and maybe have a conversation with the Education Funding Agency at the same time that we do about the school budget going on. So yeah, this is why I'm getting more and more kind of concerned that we look at 16 and 17-year-olds and what the support is, because I'm worried that what should be a really exciting time is becoming actually really anxious-making for parents and children, because I think we want children to go off thinking this is brilliant and to take advantage of all the new and exciting opportunities in Cornwall and beyond. But these concerns about where to live is just adding to stress when they should actually be focusing on their GCSEs.
Thank you. Chairman of Council.
Yeah, having gone through this, I can remember my sixth form days as the most miserable time of my life. Not from the academic point of view, that was the only good part about it. I went through 3 sets of digs in a time before we had pastoral officers, before we had all the politically correct things. Thank goodness it's changed an awful lot since then. But a thing that has always struck me is the lack of involvement of the individual schools, and I do think they should have more of input with the pastoral officer and take more care, because in the days when I was at sixth form, we felt we could drop off the edge of the planet and nobody would have known. Now it has moved on an awful lot since then, thankfully. But the schools could, as I say, take more note and be more helpful in these situations. The young who go away do need to feel that there is some support and that somebody cares, particularly at times which are difficult for schools, evenings and weekends. It is a very lonely place at the moment.
Thank you, Chairman. Keith, did you...
Just to add to that, surprisingly, there are some schools who are reluctant to engage with myself, in even replying to letters, or even with our pastoral support officer, which is a battle we continue to fight.
The schools do obviously have a responsibility around safeguarding. They have a lot of responsibility, and they should engage with us. Our children are very vulnerable, and it's been something we've talked about and shared concerns about over forever, as Aisling says, yes. Beryl.
We've been talking about this safeguarding for a long time, haven't we, with our post-16s, and I've been on this group for a few years now, and we've asked people to take this, which is criminal barring now, and they are reluctant to, and parents are reluctant to ask them. So we're in a very difficult position here. It's never been resolved, really.
I think all we can do as an authority is to actually encourage the parents in the accommodations. I don't think we have any, legal jurisdiction to, do it, which is really quite unfortunate because our children are vulnerable. Mrs. Dale.
Just a question, if I may, through you, Chairman. The report does say it is of concern as many host providers are taking the decision to withdraw. Mr. Grosset has mentioned one who moved away, and there seems to be a general assumption around finances. But may I ask, do we actually do anything in terms of investigating why each host provider is...
Yeah, there's a story behind every family who decide that they would rather not.
There's something...
No, there's no trend, but it's down to their experience perhaps of having a youngster in their house for that year.
Probably not the right place to go into it. Yes, thank you, Julia. Are there any questions or comments? Well, we seem to have had the debate on the sort of negative part of the report, but there's an awful lot of positiveness in this report that the youngsters who actually live on these islands are actually experienced, and let us not forget that, although being concerned for when they do leave the island. So thank you, Joel. And this report is for information only, so I don't think we really need a formal recommendation. So thank you very much. Item 11 is the education outcomes, 2014 to 15. And again, we can hand you over to Keith.
Thank you. So this is a follow-up from the paper I brought to last committee with some more detail and information regarding where we're at in terms of standards at the Five Islands School. And as reported last time, it is a mixed bag with outstanding, on the face of it, outstanding results at Key Stage 4, passable results at Key Stage 1, but poor standards at Key Stage 2. Now, the data analysis only reflects things as they were at July 2015. It doesn't actually reflect current practice and delivery within the school. And to triangulate our next steps, we have commissioned retired HMI to visit the school today, and he wasn't meant to be here yesterday, but he was late arrival due to weather. So his visit has been curtailed, but he's doing a full analysis of teaching and learning across Key Stage 2, including a book scrutiny, lesson observations, and meeting with middle and senior leaders within the school. His report will inform our next steps towards developing an action plan to ensure that standards in Key Stage 2 improve against a fairly tight turnaround in terms of inspection delivery and inspection timelines. Things need to move within school urgently, as a matter of urgency. We'll get a strategy together and a development plan in place as a matter of urgency following today's monitoring visit, and we will be working closely with the school and help supporting the resource of the school improvement work within school to move things on. As mentioned earlier, the timeline is tight. Ofsted are due within the next couple of terms, in theory, and we want outcomes across the school to be consistently good. It's not acceptable that standards are good in parts. We need consistently good standards of education across the Five Islands School, and we'll be working with the school to develop a plan that helps them get there.
Thank you. Councillor Mawson?
Yeah, coming to the Key Stage 2 issues and the report that we had at the last meeting, this is a $64,000 question. What progress has been made in the meantime between then and now?
That's what we're trying to find out.
That's why we have the visitor here currently.
So we have commissioned the improvement work to be in school yesterday and today. The school has also been working on how it's addressing its data management systems to a certain extent, and in actually trying to identify those students more accurately who are not making expected progress. And that is some work that's ongoing within the school, that they're actually getting to grips with data, getting to grips with tracking individual students carefully to make sure that we're getting those students in the right position.
As a gut feeling, do you feel that there is an improvement in the position or not between the previous meeting and now?
I think when issues are raised across the board, across government, thanks to Mr. Rowe as well, being on the Board of Governors as well, the ante is being upped, and we're seeing a galvanised, people have becoming galvanised to make significant progress. Whether it is significant enough, what we have is a totally different Key Stage 2 team to the team who were delivering in summer. So if you're looking at the sort of actions you would recommend for school improvement in terms of improving quality of teaching, there is a new team in place already, and that's why we've got a monitoring visit now to see what impact that new team have had since September.
Further to that, is there anything that this committee in particular can do to support those actions that has not already been done? Is there anything at all financial, practical, or whatever that we can do? Because obviously the Key Stage 2 issue is the biggest challenge at the moment facing school, and we as a committee want those children to thrive just as well as all the other ones do. So, if there is, please feel free, get the head or yourself or whatever to ask, is there anything we can do now?
Yes.
I think we have increased the budget for school improvement that we've improved, and
on top of that, Chairman, I think we ought to encourage them to ask for help if necessary.
I think we also, obviously, the person who's in the school today, his findings will be key to how we move forward as the local authority with our responsibilities, because we can't be seen as a children's committee to be interfering, too much within the school, although school improvement is our responsibility. But I know maybe Mr. Rowe would like to add something to this debate, or would he rather not? It's entitled.
Shall I add to the debate?
Yes. You have got a report outlining what is being done, so maybe leave it till then, unless you want to leave it anything specific to the results.
What I'd like to do...
They're historical, really, aren't they?
Yeah, what I'd like to do, Chair, if I may, is to take on board the comments of Keith and Ted, I beg your pardon, in my report,
yes,
if I may,
certainly.
and I'll bring it to a whole, if I could.
Yes, thank you. Are there any other questions? I think, obviously, Key Stage 2 has been playing on our minds for quite a little while now, and hopefully there will be improvement. But again, let us not forget the good work being done within the rest of the school, and I would personally publicly like to congratulate all those children in Key Stage 4 who had the good results last summer, and all the staff that have been teaching them, and we hope for good results this coming year. I think, like all of us, we all need a bit of encouragement sometimes, and I think it's important to recognise the good. Aisling?
And I was going to suggest that we'll probably put that in writing to the school.
Yes. Councillor Mrs. Grotty.
Thank you, Chairman. I totally agree. We can't just be negative, but nevertheless, when you read this report, it is concerning. And I think as a committee member, I would like to say, may we put on the recommendation that members recognise with concern the variation in educational standards reported, just if you like to beef up the fact that we would like to be supportive as you move down what is obviously going to be a little bit of a difficult road for a bit. I'd just like to see us, if you like, beef it up a bit, but only in a way to be supportive of your efforts, not to be negative.
So are you making that recommendation? Fran?
Yes, I would like to make the recommendation that we add the words "with concern" after members recognise.
Yes.
Perhaps somebody would like to second that.
I'm just concerned that with concern, I mean, the whole thing of schools causing concern and so on, we just need to have a kind of slight sense of perspective. Obviously, we focus on our school rightly, but actually trickily too much sometimes. And would a school like Five Islands, with those Key Stage 2 results in that year, have got the same level of scrutiny from its local authority? And I don't know. So I just want to be careful that we just don't keep upping the ante and get too dramatic, because we're doing the work we need to do. The main role of this committee is to quality assure the role of school improvement. And that's what we're doing here. I think if we kind of make too many judgments about the school's achievement, I'm just really worried about where we're straying there.
Yes, Mr. Cade.
Thank you, Chairman. I would counsel against using the word concern, because there is a thing called schools causing concern, which is a real thing.
Ofsted.
So if you want to find another concerning word, if you think this isn't strong enough, then please do so. But I would counsel this committee against using the word concern.
Yes. Steve.
If we do express concern, by whatever name you wish to say it, we've already done that really, because these figures basically came to us last time, didn't they? So we've already done that. The school is put measures in which I assume it would be extraordinary if they got worse. And I think almost certainly it will improve because it's been highlighted. So I mean, whilst I can completely understand why Fran wishes to put with concern in, I don't think it's particularly useful to demotivate in the sense that it can do. So I would prefer that it stays as it is, especially given that the inspection is happening today, so there may not be anything to have concern about, and we don't quite know that at the moment.
Thank you.
I'm happy to withdraw. I just really wanted to use it as an expression of councillors' commitment, not in a negative way. So I'm quite happy to withdraw that.
Thank you. Any further comments? If not, could I have the recommendation that is printed? Proposal, thank you, Avril. Seconded? Thank you. All in favour, please show. Thank you. It's carried. We now move to item 12, which is the local governor update, and we have a report from Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just beg your indulgence for a second, but it is my maiden speech in the House, after all. I would just like to say a very big thank you to both you and members, officers, the governors and the school for making me so welcome in this role. It's been really, really helpful in terms of coming to terms with being new to the island and indeed new to this role. And I'm still going through that induction process. So please, if people could bear that in mind, I'd be very grateful.
Thank you.
You won't be surprised, I do look forward to supporting and challenging the school, and somebody used the word interfering. I'm interfering a lot in the school at the moment, and make no apology for that, because I think there are some deadlines that are coming fairly soon to the school, which we need to be ready for, and I'll move on from that. But having said that, I mean, I would applaud the school for the performance at Key Stage 4. There are conditions that sit in the favour of the school, but the school still needs to make sure that those young people achieve. And they achieved extremely well last year, being in the top percentile nationally for progress and value added. And I would applaud the school for that. And I would also think that having been involved in education, you do need to catch children being good on occasions. I think you need to catch the school being good as well. And I think this is an opportunity, and I applaud the fact that somebody's going to write to the school and obviously offer their congratulations, because teacher morale at this point in time is enormously important. Having said that, you'll see from my report that the school does do things well. But there's no doubt in my mind that the school needs to ruthlessly prioritise its school improvement work. And I haven't been absolutely assured on that front. The absolute clear priorities need to be made abundantly clear to all within the school. And the other issue is accelerating progress. The school, in my opinion, and it is early days, but the school is making progress. What I think we can actually do by way of supporting and challenging the school is to actually, in a sense, accelerate that progress. So with that in mind, we've been having some discussions in Governor's full committee and subcommittees. And you'll notice from my report that the governors and head teacher are very clear in terms of the head teacher's role, that it should clearly be associated with improving standards within the school, and that the head teacher should not be diverted in her attentions, nor indeed the governors, towards the status of the school. What we'd like to be is in a position where the school is either good or outstanding, and then what will be in the future. And I don't want to get embroiled in long debate about what the future might hold with government policy or else. But it was refreshing that the governors and the head teacher were very keen on keeping their eye on the ball in terms of improving standards as a high priority. With that in mind, and the whole issue of in a sense, prioritising, we're certainly looking at the school assessment policy in root and branch terms. And one of the things that I think the school will do well to focus upon is the issue of target setting, target getting, and target reporting. We need to know where all children, where they are, where they potentially can be, and most importantly for each child to know what he or she can do to improve from where they are towards their goal. And that's something we're going to be putting a lot of effort in over the coming months. In line with that, the head teacher has said that every time she comes to the full governing body meeting, she will be looking at individual and collective progress of young people and rating that, red, amber, green, so that governors have a real strategic view on what might be done to help continue to support that improvement. The second area, I guess, that we're looking at very closely is the issue of more able children, and it was a key issue in Ofsted, and yet does not actually leap out from school policy, although actually there is some good practice in place. So we'll be looking at supplementing the school's personalisation policy, which is very good, but it doesn't include the issue of most able. And certainly Ofsted, if the new inspector, will be looking very closely at that as an issue when they return in perhaps November. So we're looking at making sure that that's in a very positive position. And I would just say, and excuse my lack of knowledge and naivety, if we're looking at a school more able policy, I believe that the local authority are looking also at the issue of gifted and talented, or more able, call it what you will. And it would be lovely to have some joined up thinking between school and authority to make sure that the needs of all of the under 18s are met, whether it be in the world of sporting or drama or academically. I'd love there to be that joined up thinking and perhaps a joint policy on that front. But nevertheless, Ofsted will be looking at the practice in the school as well as the policy. So there is no time to be missed here. We need to have the policies right and then the practice on the ground ready for the start of the new academic year in September. That's where we are at the moment, Chair. I'm happy to take
Thank you very much for that very encouraging and comprehensive report of the work that you've done in the limited time that you've been on the governing body, and I'm sure it will continue. Are there any questions? No? In which case, can we have a recommendation that we note the report? And obviously for your work with Keith over any sort of dual, over the gifted, what we call the gifted and talented. Yeah, thank you. Proposed, Avril? Thank you. Seconded? Thank you. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Now we move to item 13. Now this is an item that Keith promised me 2 years ago that actually wouldn't be coming to members anymore. But the government haven't got their act together and get it legislation, have they, Keith?
I'm afraid I don't have Nicky Morgan's ear.
No, so they are come to us again.
So, yes, term dates for 2017-18 and a slight amendment for 16-17 because I couldn't count to 195, I'm afraid. And so there's a slight adjustment for next academic year as well. So, yes, there is statute that says this is a school duty, but there should be a commencement order, and that commencement order hasn't been made yet, so it still rests with the local authority. For term dates in 16-17, 17-18, following a standard cycle of spring, summer and autumn terms, we did consult maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I suspect, on changing the...
Not as long ago as that, I don't think, Keith.
A few years ago on changing the cycle to meet local need. The consultation then wasn't in favour. If members wish, it might be time to start revisiting that. But as it stands, I just ask that members ratify the dates set in the calendars in the annex. Thank you.
And the school are happy?
Yes, the school are happy too.
Right, thank you. Councillor Milser. Oh. Right, seconded. All in favour, please show. Thank you. It's carried. Will it be the last time? It will be for me, but never mind. We're getting there, folks. Item 14, Children and Young People Plan Update. And again, we're working Keith hard today. A report from Keith. I would just like to say that this plan covers several years, and I'm really encouraged by the number of at least amber and green bits in it.
So thank you. This is a monitoring report on the Children and Young People Plan. Taking feedback from members received earlier last week, I have slightly reformatted, and there is a black and white large print version available for those of you who would rather access that. I'd appreciate any comments, and if you'd rather that was the standard model, we can go with that for future committees. I think Joel's sitting on a pile up there. Unfortunately, I don't have sufficient because the copier broke at 8:30 this morning. But there we go. So in terms of actions against the Children and Young People Plan, we are making progress. In particular, we are looking at commissioning a pupils' attitude to self and school survey to enhance and contribute to our understanding of children's emotional and well-being. We have Aisling and Lynn have also made contact with a head of Cornwall Virtual School who has shown an interest to help support some of our post-16 work. So that's further progress. Joel reported earlier regarding engagement with the RNLI and water safety and promoting water safety. That's slightly more progress there, in as much as we're working towards a safer community plan with the RNLI. Alongside that, we have also supported some water safety and navigation theory courses for young people with RIA, so that's further progress. In terms of the things that haven't got on our radar, it's not because of lack of engagement, it's because we haven't got round to it, I'm afraid. So the red areas are areas that we need to make time and build into our work schedule.
Honest to the end, isn't it? Thank you, Keith. I did say at the beginning it wasn't all meant to be done in the first 12 months. So progress. Are there any particular questions around the Children and Young People's Plan? And obviously some of the delivery is not just actually for the local authority to deliver. Our health partners, etc., are actually responsible for at least part delivering some of these outcomes. Any questions, or shall we just note, obviously this is a standard item on the agenda for Children's Committee? No? Oh, yes, that's on this project.
Sorry, yes, just a quick one. Have you any idea on the time frame of the commissioning the longitudinal study of post-16 outcomes? It sort of ties in with so much else that we're doing. I think it would probably impact back.
It will.
Not
You're
just
right.
move forward
and
when we find out what we actually haven't managed to achieve for our young people.
It is creeping up my consciousness, and I was thinking about it the other day, because we do actually it's one of those things that will probably be a lot easier when we harness social media fully and commission, we could go around the room now and actually go back through and get some really positive outcomes for young people who have passed through the school and have a really meaningful conversation about that really quickly from our own local knowledge. The actual commissioning process of finding someone to do that piece of work, we can start, hopefully, we'll start fairly soon. And we can draw on previous experience from people who have looked at post-16 work in 2 or 3 years ago.
Thank you. Any further questions? Chairman?
I just propose a recommendation.
Thank you very much. Have a seconder? Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. It's carried. This brings us to the last item on the agenda, updates from partners. We have one written update from Health Watch, so well done, Health Watch. But I think we will sort of just go round the table. And obviously Keith and Lynn have done their bit. Beryl, have you anything to report from the Parents' Forum? Thank you. Marion?
Sorry, can I just remind people...
Put your mic. Yeah.
Purely as a representative from Briar, there is a degree of, a lot of interest from one individual who is somewhat of a philanthropist to assist in any way possible the advancement of either one or a group of students who wish to pursue science as and to perhaps bring back the benefit of their education to the island. I have raised it before with various individuals, but he reminded me yesterday that the offer was still very
there.
much open.
Thank you, Marion. Julia, you're presenting the written one. Well done.
I have to thank Carol Clark for that, sat on the back seat. I would just like to add, perhaps highlight one point and add another under themes arising from feedback. The 4th bullet point, withdrawal of travel warrants for parental escort for 16 to 18-year-olds. There have been several moments during today's meeting when I thought, is this the moment to just highlight this? We are receiving comments from parents that it is no longer possible to get a travel warrant to accompany children who are mainland educated to medical appointments. It has been raised in other forums, and I know that there is a debate to be had around the child's right to confidentiality, post-16, etc., etc. But I would just like to highlight here that at the moment it is not possible for a parent to get a travel warrant to accompany a child between the ages of 16 and 18 to a medical appointment, even if that child desperately wants it.
Them, yeah.
And that, could be an issue where a child is feeling isolated on the mainland, and I think we would like to pursue that further. We are pursuing it through the Medical Transport and Transport Group. And the other issue that, again, I've looked at the agenda and the paperwork, and Health Watch has taken this to the Health and Wellbeing Board, but I think it's worth bringing up here, and that is the midwifery service. And Health Watch has recommended to the Health and Wellbeing Board that they take this matter up with regard to the commissioned level of service, because there are still concerns about the current model of provision, and Health Watch will undertake further work on this issue. I looked at the health and well-being, the Achieving Improved Outcomes plan for the Joint CAM strategy. There are 12 pages there that are reliant upon there being a robust midwifery service.
Yes, there are.
And good mental health in families starts at pregnancy. And I think we do need to look at that. And I just wanted to bring that to this committee for those who aren't also on Health Watch and say that's a real area of concern.
I think we'll all endorse that.
And I think that's all I need to add.
Thank you, Julia. Are there any questions anybody wish to add? No, thank you very much for your report. Sorry.
Can I just report to the group is that I went into the school to do first aid with the 7s to 11s. It was quite a daunting task, about 120 children in the course of a morning, but they were absolutely delightful, really. They were funny, but right at the end, you'd done it all. And the last day, I said, is there any questions? And one little boy said, what would you do if we met a Komodo dragon? So I said, run. But they were good, and they responded very well.
Good, thank you. Ted, do you wish to add anything? No. Phil, you've done. Joel's done. Simon, do you wish to? No? Short has? Yes. Colin?
Yeah, works largely around transitions of young people and careers guidance. There are national indicators in terms of progress on cohorts of young. One of those is around numbers NEET, one of those which is not engaged in education, employment, training, and the other is those whose status is not known. Happy to report at the end of January there were 0 NEETs and 0 not knowns on Silly, so that's very positive. A couple of anecdotal bits from Tim Moody, who's the advisor working in the school. He's attended a couple of parents' evenings since last time the committee met, and the year 11 he reported was probably the busiest he's known, so that's positive that parents are getting involved in the decisions that young people are making, so that's very positive. He's also accompanying Mary Wilton to visit year 12 pupils in their education providers on the mainland, so he's doing that to support their next stage of transition post year 12.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Obviously a really important service to our youngsters as they prepare to make career choices and as they move to the mainland. Colin. Oh, Stephen, sorry.
It's just a brief one which I can hand over to you afterwards and email it across if you wish on email. On the 15th of December 2015, the local Youth Justice Management Board agreed the proposal to integrate the Youth Offending Service into the Cornwall Adolescent Service called Gwerus Tasiwnek, which stands for Helping Young People. This was in response to the significant budget restrictions that we're facing in 16-17. The budget challenges cover all youth offending services right across England and Wales. We're not being singled out. It's a central government cut, and it's significant across the board. This will seriously affect the structure of the youth offending service, but hopefully should not affect the service that we offer to the islands at the moment. The general trend in youth offending is downwards. The first time entrant rate in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly is below that of our what we call the yacht comparison group, which are other youth offending teams and services in similar settings to ours. It's lower in the Devon and Cornwall Police Crime Commission area. It's lower than the national average, and it's the lowest in the southwest. So that's good, and the same is true for our reoffending rates in Cornwall, which stands at 26.9. The average is over 30, and again it's lower than all of those measures that I mentioned earlier. The trend for court orders is down, but the trend for out-of-court disposals, which is an earlier intervention, is up, which is really positive because it's a diversion away from court. And also our prevention work has been increasing over the last 24 months, so we're taking full and total responsibility for the reduction in first-time entrants. It's only down to us and our prevention programme that we offer. Regarding specific figures for the Isles of Scilly, since March 2015, we've not had any active interventions with young people from the islands. So that's the situation as we stand at the moment. It's daunting, the cuts that we're facing, but hopefully the merge with Gweris Tushinik will cover some of the bases that may well be left if we were left on our own.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to Stephen? Perhaps if you gave your notes to Andy, he can, yes. John, are you still there? Do you wish to add to any update from the LSCB point of view? No. Jude, are you still there? No.
Was it just because I was talking?
Yeah. Oh, Chris, sorry. Sorry, I am here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, John Clemens is here too.
Sorry?
John Clemens, I'm here too, sorry.
Yeah. Did you want to give any update on the work of the LSCB at all, John, or have you said it all previously?
I think the only thing, discussions I've had with Ashley before, we're conscious from the LSCB that we have one set of priorities that probably don't do the job for both Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So we are developing a proposal that we will take to the next board, that we will have two groups that will look at sort of executive level work, one for the Isles of Scilly and we will probably have two sets of priorities, one really on your particular needs as a
You're breaking up, I'm afraid, John. I don't think we are hearing very well at the moment. I mean, I think we gathered that obviously there are going to be two groups created, one locally for the Isles of Scilly, which will be a really important step forward. But I think, I hate to say this, but I think we better leave it at there because you're not really coming through very clearly at the moment.
Not a problem.
Thank you very much. Jude, do you wish to say anything?
I think the presentation both of most of the world that's currently going on. I will take back this issue about...
Carry on. Hello?
Hello. I will take back the issue of midwifery.
Good. Yes, good.
And if you have any of those issues, please email me direct.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of the meeting. I thank you all for attending and also for John and Jude being on the teleconference, which hasn't been too bad today, I have to say, having experienced the horror of a meeting last week. So thank you all very much, and thank you for the team and to everybody who's contributed. Thank you.
Jude Bowler enters Kerno, has left the conference. John Clements has left the conference.